Hello, what's up? Welcome to my channel. So this is a kind of laid back video. I just wanted to go over some goals that I had regarding like my reading and stuff this upcoming year, especially because this is going to be a big year for me because I am having my first baby. I also wanted to show you all how I am planning for this year, especially regarding my reading, because I switched over from doing a bullet journal, like a physical bullet journal, to planning on an iPad. So if you have an iPad, I can show you what I'm using, show you just the little bit of planning that I'm gonna do. So let's go ahead and get started. So like I said, I'm gonna be having my first baby this year. I'm currently 27 and a half weeks pregnant. So I am about to enter into my third trimester on Saturday. That's also when my baby shower is. So I'm really, really excited. But in saying that, I am due April 1st. So we named her Alice Ophelia. And so I feel like Alice could come at any time between March and April. I mean, if you really think about it. And I've been really debating on just what reading goal I should have for this year, because this is going to be the first year that I am not working. I have work that I do here at home regarding YouTube because I have 2 channels. I also have a Patreon and I have an Etsy shop now where I sell my TBR cards. I also can listen to way more books doing all of the things that I do rather than working, because I was working in food. So I don't want to drop down my goal, I don't think, because I'm planning on breastfeeding, and I know that that takes like a ton of time, whether you're breastfeeding or pumping or whatever you're doing. I would like to use that time in order to read more, listen to more audiobooks. Each year I've kind of read something different regarding like my Goodreads stats. But just this past year I had put my goal for 80 because the previous years I had hit like 112 one year and then one year I didn't. So I put 80 just to, you know, not make myself feel pressured. I ended up reading 104 books this year, even with working like full-time and part-time. So I actually think I'm going to put my Goodreads goal at 100 because it's just a nice even number, and I feel like I am going to have more time to read and listen because of the amount of hours I won't be spending at a job that I can't read or listen. I feel like all the walks I'll be taking with my baby, all of the feeding I'll be doing, I just really feel like I will have more time to read. So I don't think that that will be too much pressure. So we're going to go with 100 books for our Goodreads challenge, which I actually use Goodreads and the StoryGraph. I update them both. I really love the StoryGraph stats, but I still do Goodreads just because Goodreads was what I started with, and I like being able to look back throughout the year. So I do both. Best of both worlds. For some other goals, I actually didn't really think that hard or care that much about like the nitty-gritty goals. I obviously want to keep like my channel going, and I want to keep reading, and I want to keep updating you guys on what I'm reading, but it's not really my intention to do anything crazy and shocking or, you know, anything like that. It's like I just want to read what I want to read for pleasure. Because I actually signed up for the Aardvark book club, which is very similar to Book of the Month. It's just a different company where you get to pick like a book or 2 a month. It's, you know, a selection. I do have a goal of reading that every single month. I am gonna be like a month behind. So for instance, the books that I picked for December, I actually picked 2. I am reading one of them in January, and then I actually didn't pick anything for January because I wasn't interested in anything. So I'm gonna read the other one then for February. And my goal is to keep up with those Aardvark book club picks, because if I don't, then I would need to cancel or suspend the subscription, because that means I'm being irresponsible with it and I'm buying books just to sit on my shelf. So that is a goal, and I am also making that into a reading vlog each month. So that will be really exciting because you'll actually get to see my thoughts and like learn what I thought about that book, especially because a lot of their picks, one of the reasons why I signed up is their picks are like books that I've never heard of. They seem very underrated and I'm really excited for that. So I hope you guys are looking forward to those vlogs. I do want to continue my bookish cooking series. I think I have one planned for January, which I'm really excited about. I will still be doing my TBR game this year, which I am also really excited about, but I'm going to try and pick a little less, I think, with my cards each month, just to give myself maybe a little bit of freedom here and there to pick up a book that I might just want to pick up because I'm in the mood for. I don't want to consist my entire TBR off of just my game in general, because it does get a little stifling at times if you don't let yourself kind of like free read or roam around. And so say I have a goal of reading like 10 books a month, I would want to pick maybe like 6 of those from my game, and then have a few other books that I could just like not even really set a TBR, just like when I finish those 6 books, just be like, what do I want to pick up next? That would also become helpful for the times where I might decide to buy a book for some reason, because then I could read it right on the spot. Or my library, I have seen recently, has had some really good books in the library sale, but I usually don't buy them because I know they're gonna sit on my shelf. And that comes actually to my next goal, is to read to 0 again this year. So I don't want it to ever get as overwhelming as it was when I did my reading to 0 like last year. Well, it was like part last year, part the year before that. Reading to 0 was a challenge that I created. It was in 2021, where I had to read all the books that I owned until I got to 0. And that ended up taking me from August 2021 to June of 2022 of last year. And it was a hard challenge, but I am so glad that I did that, because I ended up going through all of my books and I either unhauled them, read them, or DNF'd them, and I ended up being able to start with a fresh, clean slate. I think I had gone through like 150 or 160 books. Like that's what I had on my shelf. It had gotten crazy and out of control, at least in my opinion, and it just helped really fine tune what I wanted to read and what I was interested in reading. And I never want to get to that point where a book has been sitting on my shelf for like 6 years, because why would it have to sit there for 6 years? You know what I mean? I do like to utilize my library, which is one of the reasons why I don't own a bunch of books. And so if a book is at my library, I will not usually purchase it for my shelf. I usually try and purchase books that are not available at my library, which is also really helpful for me, because then I don't feel this like stifling pressure of like having to read all these books on my shelf. But currently I wrote down all of the books that I have on my shelf. I have 55 books on my to be read shelf. So that's actually the shelf behind me here. I reorganized it, and that is the shelf that I'm talking about. So my goal this year is, of the 100 books that I read, obviously, 55 of those should be these from my shelf. Now, I am allowing myself, obviously, to buy books if I would like to buy books, and I would be adding them to this list, but I'm going to be putting a date as to when I bought them, so that way I know at the end of the year the books that have been still on my shelf from 6 months ago, a year ago, compared to books that I might have just recently hauled, because those aren't as important for me to read compared to ones that have been sitting there for a while. In regards to other goals, I don't have any type of goal of trying to read more of a certain genre or trying to get out of my comfort zone or anything like that. I do really believe in not really reading out of my comfort zone, just because I already have a super realistic rating. Should I say realistic? I don't know. I usually have a low average rating because I rate books very honestly, and I rate them exactly how I'm thinking and feeling in that moment, and not caring about whether that's hurting someone's feelings or whether that's someone's favorite book or whatever it would be. If I'm gonna read out of my comfort zone, then most of the time, I'm just not even gonna like those books anyway, because I'm not really trying, like, I don't wanna read out of my comfort zone. I want to read books you know, I want to find those 5 stars. I want to read books that I'm enjoying. I don't want to read books that I'm not enjoying. That's what you had to do in school. So in saying that, I don't have any goals reading a specific genre. It seems like over the last year or so, I have really gotten into memoirs a lot, obviously, and I've kind of geared a little bit into true crime. So maybe I'll look a little bit more into true crime. I do want to try out just a little bit of historical fiction. I have The Great Alone on my shelf to try out, but it's not going to be something that I'm going to force myself into. So maybe I'll try a few historical fictions, and maybe I could find the ones that I jive with the most, because I really loved The Dream Daughter by Diane Chamberlain. So I would love to find more books that are like that, but not necessarily say that I have to read historical fiction. I would say another thing also, not that I'm going to like, I don't know, it'd probably take a lot of work, but I would like to read more underrated reads compared to just all the popular books. I feel like I've really kind of honed in on that, especially last year, where for instance, I've read all the Riley Sagers except for the last one. And I just decided, like, I was like, I don't like him anymore. Like, I really enjoyed his first 2 books, but his writing style kind of changed, and the more popular he became, I feel like he's just kind of like throwing a book out every year just because of his popularity. I don't feel like he's doing that great of a job on it. But again, that's my personal opinion. I know a lot of people really like his books, but I'm not going to waste my time reading books because they're popular and everyone's raving about them and it's the thing to do. They're all over Instagram, whatever it would be. I want to read books that I am excited about, so I really want to look into some underrated authors or just underrated titles in general, which is one of the reasons why I joined Aardvark Book Club, because I feel like their selections were more underrated than Book of the Months. I feel like Book of the Month kind of has picked the same authors over and over again, and they're usually authors that I don't love. So I'm excited to see if I can find a few books or authors through Aardvark that maybe I've never heard about before, and maybe that I could start really loving and supporting. I don't feel like I have any other goals, so I'll just go in and show you the little bit of planning that I'm doing within my iPad. I don't really write down a lot of stuff with books. I've tried to do book journals before, but it's really hard to keep up with, and I already have a hard time like keeping up with my reviews with writing them on Goodreads. Like, that is something that's important, is keeping up with Goodreads and the story graph, because at the end of the year, it's super helpful to have those stats at the end of the year. But I really don't keep up with that much in my planner, but I wanted to show you all which planner I'm using in case, because there's a lot of book planners in here, or a lot of sheets. So in case you wanted to use this, this is a great feature to use. Okay, so this is not affiliated at all. This is just a planner that I bought off of Etsy. I bought it for a little bit cheaper than this because it was on sale, but it is only $10 for an entire 2-year planner. So this is the one that I got, and it's a full planner plus a book planner. So I'll leave the Etsy link down below in case you guys want to get this same one, but there are lots of book planners on Etsy in case you wanted to plan with your iPad. Going into the planner that I just showed you, there is this whole book planner spread. So like, obviously there's like regular things that I use, but there's this actual like book planner tab, and this brings up all of these things. So we have a reading wish list, we have favorite books, favorite authors, favorite quotes, bookshelf, book review, library book tracker, reading challenge, book tracker, and I think that might be it. Yeah. So as you can see, I am using the bookshelf, and I'm actually going to put all of the books that I read this year. So I'm actually currently reading Twice in a Lifetime, which is why I downloaded and put the cover here, and then I can actually do my star rating once I'm done. And so I can just duplicate this page, and I thought it would be really cute in order to kind of do it even maybe by month. So I'll probably write like January under this, And then that way I can see like which books I read in each month. And even if I duplicate this and say I read, what is this, 9? Say I read 10 books, I can just duplicate it and put both pages as January and then start a new page for February. So I am excited about this because I am a very visual person and I really love book covers, but it was a little bit more challenging to print off the book covers every single month and put those in my like physical bullet journal. So I'm really enjoying like going to do it this way. The only other spread that I think I'm going to be using in this book planner is the book tracker. I wrote Reading to Zero on here because I tried to put them in alphabetical order. These are all of the books that are currently on my shelf. So I'm going to be marking them as read and probably highlighting the ones that I read and then maybe highlighting if I unhaul them. I'll probably do a little like tracker up here. For instance, I could pick like one of these like this, and then I could do like a different color, and I could do, you know, like unhaul is that color, you know, something like that. So, and then that one could be like red. And I could even do a color for like all the books that I'm hauling this year. So like these are already on my shelf, but then if I get more books, I'm just gonna like add them on here, but I can do like a color and mark that as like the color that I'm doing for if I had bought them this year. So that way I know which ones are like newly bought, you know. Those are the spreads that I'm using for the like book planner. I'm still using like Goodreads and Storygraph for like reviews and stuff because it's a little bit counterproductive for me to write like book reviews here and then type them up for Goodreads and the Storygraph. So I just do all of that via typing it up, Goodreads and Storygraph. But I like to have the book tracker in order to keep track of, you know, the books I'm hauling and unhauling and stuff and reading for my shelf. And then I also am going to enjoy the bookshelf so I can see what books I read throughout the year within that certain month. So that is what I'm using for planning. And I think people had asked me before like what iPad I have. This one I bought used from my sister-in-law. So I think it is, I just looked it up. This is an iPad Air 3. And then this is the first generation pencil. So not the newest pencil and not the newest iPad. Definitely older versions, but it works perfectly fine. And I've been really enjoying planning. If you want to see like my like in-depth planning for like other things that I'm doing, I actually have that over on my main channel. So I will link that above for when that comes out in like a day or two, because then I can show you like I have cleaning lists, I have calendars, I have like pregnancy journal stuff. And so I'm using my iPad for all of my planning this year.